Hello and welcome to VoiceOver Plaza, the podcast from directvoices.com, the VO marketplace, where voice talents meet voice seekers directly without middlemen.
Gary Terzza, thank you very much for this interview. I welcome you on behalf of this community of voiceover talents all over the world.
Good to be here, Constantino. Thank you very much for inviting me along.
Gary, where are you located actually?
I'm located at the moment in a place called St Albans, which is about 25 miles north of London, a Roman city, old Roman city. But we do the voiceover training actually in London.
Gary, you have spent over 2 decades announcing on British television. You started your voicing career at ITV more than 30 years ago. Then in the late 80s, you also had your own radio show, right? And back
Correct,
in 2005, you developed VO Masterclass, a voiceover training program helping beginners in the art of voiceovers. This offer has indeed attracted many students willing to earn money from their voices. So, first question, Gary, please let me know how you decided to become a coach.
I think it was because so many people, when I was doing voiceovers and TV stuff myself, so many people, if I met them at parties, dinner parties, or just chatting generally, new people we met, would say, "What do you do for a living?" And I would tell them, and they would say, "Well, how do you possibly get into that?" And I used to think, well, how do you get into that? Even though I'd done it for a while, I thought, well, that's a very good question. And I thought, well, there's obviously a lot of people out there who would quite like to give voiceovers a go. So I tried it and just to see if there's any demand here in the UK and where we are. And there was, and lots of people started coming along and making inquiries and so on. So that's really how the coaching session began.
And there is a demand, right? Right now, because of the digital revolution, that anyone can have, a decent equipment to record voiceovers. I guess that helps that demand that creates more people willing to enter the market with voiceovers. So we have often said, you and me and people who have, some background in this profession, that having a good voice is not enough to really get a job. Well, this is obvious, but not so for some beginners. So why is that?
Well, it's only partly about having the good voice. It's mostly about what you do with it. I mean, the voice purely gives you a position in the marketplace. If you've got a middle-aged female voice, for example, and you come from Surrey down here, rather up marketplace in England, you'll have a certain voice and a certain voice style. But it's what you do with it that's the most important thing. And it's getting the words off the page. And I always go on to my students about that's what it's all about, getting those words off the page, bringing them to life, getting the meaning across. So the voice is important, but not as important as maybe you think it is.
So what are the other ingredients that are needed for a voice beginner to succeed in this industry?
Well, I think the main thing is, apart from the voice, of course, the main thing is that you know what you're doing in terms of the performance. I think that's important. You're able to respond to direction. You also need some basic recording equipment, which is much, much cheaper these days. You can do quite a lot with a fairly decent condenser USB microphone. Many of my students have kind of gone off and done stuff with that. Your computer, some software like Audacity, which is free, and the marketing. I think the marketing is often the bit that people forget about, and that's just as important as well. So it's a mixture of art and business, I think, and some basic technical skills as well. Those are the 3 main strands that you need.
And one also element is, of course, voice coaching to get proper training. What do you think is that important?
Well, I mean, you could argue that actually you could be self-taught, a bit like a musician in a way. And I think that is perfectly fine and legitimate. But if you need someone to mentor you and you want someone to guide you through the labyrinth of the voiceover industry, then I think certainly a coach can do that and just demonstrate what it should sound like. And there are so many things to take on board, from pricing to how do I respond to this? How do I get the energy in this particular piece? Why am I sounding so flat? Lots and lots of questions that a coach can help you with. So it's really having an extra pair of ears. I think that's what it is, an extra pair of ears, and someone to say, tell you what, why don't you try it like this?
Exactly, because it's not just about the reading techniques, how to breathe properly, etc., but all that surrounds this work, like you mentioned, the marketing and the fact that you are in your home studio, but then you have to get out there to knock on the door of these potential clients. Well, knocking on the door is just a metaphor, because nowadays it's through the internet or maybe a phone call with some luck,
Yeah.
But the thing is that practice makes perfection. Practice, like for a pilot who flies many, many hours, and then by flying so much, then he actually learns. So that's, in my case, also how I learned. But also I benefited from my colleagues who were very much ahead, so they taught me how to really talk to the microphone. Probably some people are also disenchanted with some coaching, some trainings that they promise that, well, you will get this training and you will be able to start a career. It's not that simple, right? You need a time and some luck too.
You do, yeah. I mean, you can have a spectacular beginning. I had one student who, well, this was a few years ago actually, but she left the studio and within about 48 hours she got a job for £1,000.
That's a success story.
Yeah, but that's very rare. That's very rare. And interestingly, she didn't do very much afterwards. I think she was so dazzled by the whole thing. So, yeah, I mean, hard work, really putting in, you made exactly the right point about putting in the flying hours. And it is about that. It's, putting in the work, putting in the practice, putting in the legwork for the promotion and the business side as well, and the recording side too. So, yeah, I mean, if you're expecting overnight success, it ain't gonna happen. You've got to really try and put that graft in, I think.
Do you think for the lonely voiceover talent, someone who has actually worked for years and years from his home studio, do you think he actually needs also feedback from another professional? Do you think that he needs a coach?
I think that's a good question, and lots of people would say, no, I'm an established voiceover artist. I don't need any training. Perhaps they don't need training so much. That's maybe too strong a word. Perhaps what they do need is the communities that exist. And there's loads of great communities. I mean, LinkedIn has got some. I think Facebook's got some actually, and Google Plus as well. Fantastic for communities, and you can join at any stage. So you can be a complete beginner, or you could be a well-established person. And there's a lot of sharing. It's all free. People are very open about things. They'll give tips and advice on recording or on performance and so on. And new trends in the industry, like the demise of ISDN is the big thing at the moment, and the rise of IPDTL and other ways of transferring files. And I think that is those communities probably are a better bet rather than going to a coach. Occasionally we get people who are lapsed. So they may have done voiceovers back in the 90s or the 80s, and technology has moved on, but they haven't, and they went off and did something else. And often they'll come back and say, look, can you just bring me up to speed on this? And it's a bit like riding a bike. You're a bit wobbly at first, and then you're back on it.
If you're a good musician, you will keep the rhythm all the time, all your life.
Yes, I think you will. That's true, actually. Yeah, very true.
Can you tell us, Gary, something about your approach to teaching reading techniques? I mean, something very specific about how is your method in terms of how you train people on a daily basis?
Well, I'm a great believer that the coach actually, all they do and all I do is give a person permission to try and explore new ways of doing things. So what I do, the sort of specifics of it are, if we have the student in the studio, we put them in the voiceover booth, I'm in the control room, and I give a demonstration of how I would do it personally. It's not the right way necessarily, but it's my interpretation. And it gives them an idea of how to read those words. So if it's a hard sell commercial, they can pick up on that. If it's soft sell or whatever, or an e-learning, they can hear how I am delivering it. And that usually sets the tone for the piece, and they can then not copy off me. I don't want them to do that at all, because I want their personality to come through, but at least to have an idea about pacing, about energy and intonation and emphasis and so on. And that's really a good guide, I think, to do it. And we'll do that many, many times. So we could spend 20 minutes, half an hour on, sort of a 30-second, 40-second piece, really. And we keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So that's the way I get people to try and understand the meaning behind the words and what the words are all about. Because that's what voiceovers are all about, really.
I think it's a very important point that actually when you start, it's not a question of just imitating or something. You have to emulate somehow at the beginning to get
Yes.
the hang of it. But then you have to acquire your own style, because everybody, and we are stressing that all the time, that everybody is unique and the voice is unique. So you have to keep that differentiation that makes your niche in the market, because if we just imitate, then you are not different, just a standard voice.
And it's how you learn language, isn't it? I mean, you're a linguist. I'm not. I wish I was, but you're a very talented linguist, Constantino, as a trilinguist. And
am I?
And yeah, so your bio says.
For the languages, you mean? Okay.
Yeah. And I think with that, you sort of learn languages through emulation, don't you? Through listening and being immersed in it, and that's the best way of learning a language. And I think with voiceovers, it's pretty much the same. Although you're speaking the same language you've always spoken, just hearing somebody else and hearing how other people do it gives you a clue as to perhaps how you might have a go at doing it. But as you say, bringing something of you, your personality, your identity to it at the same time. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, talking about the languages, it is true that there are some universal principles that no matter what language, if we are talking about Western European languages in general, the principles for good reading and good delivering the message, getting the message across, are pretty much the same. Of course, Asian cultures, or it could be probably different. They stress the things in a less aggressive tone, probably, and also within Europe you have some different nuance, different actually sensibilities and subtleties about how you deliver the message. But the basics, and that's why this podcast is also multilingual, because we also do it in Spanish and in French, and even we have done it in Portuguese as well.
Right.
It is we actually what we have found out as it is that the way to direct voice talents is mostly the same at the studio. So
that's interesting, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. From our background is that you have a voice talent who is, for instance, Danish, and of course, I don't speak Danish, or the sound engineer doesn't speak Danish, but he knows how to direct him through another language, and because he's able to recognize when he's doing right or doing wrong. Of course, not about the articulation or the pronunciation, that's a different thing. It's how you deliver it. Are you really true? Are you putting the right emotion, the right emphasis, etc.?
We have lots of other people of different languages. As you can imagine, London is a big kind of cosmopolitan place. It attracts people from all over the world. So although English is our primary language that we teach in, even though I don't speak any other languages, we often have French people in, Italians, quite a few very successful Italians actually, German, and so on. We even had a guy from Cairo, an Arabic guy, who flew in from Cairo right during the middle of the Arab Spring, and actually came over to London and said, and he was 10 minutes early. He said, I would have been earlier, but the Arab Spring kind of delayed me a little bit. And although we couldn't understand a word he was saying, you could pick up where he was making mistakes and where he needed to add more emphasis and energy and so on. It is quite remarkable, actually.
Now, my question is, can this training, this coaching be done at a distance using, for instance, like we are using right now, Skype or other methods? Because that opens up really a universe of possibilities that, I mean, because all these people are scattered all over the world, and then maybe they want to ask for your services, and you can provide them through Skype. Is that a possible thing to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's all feasible. I mean, I've only just started thinking about doing stuff through Skype because I've always been very much a hands-on, meet the people, certainly to begin with, and then we've done stuff remotely, usually just via email and me listening to them recording at home and critiquing it. But I have had several inquiries from people saying, would you do it via Skype? So it's something that we're thinking about, and I think I would say it could certainly work. I mean, I'm amazed that we can chat to people at length over Skype. And it is something I'm thinking about at the moment. So hopefully we'll get that off the ground in the next couple of weeks or so. So yeah, it'll be exciting new development.
You have already mentioned some success stories. Maybe if you can pick up some others too that stress the point of the thing that we need to be thinking about coaching that is important for your career.
Yeah, I mean, our students are our successful students anyway, and not every person is successful, of course. It's a sad fact of life for various reasons. I mean, we've got one of my students very recently, he has just been awarded a whole documentary series for Chinese TV, Phoenix Television, I think they're called. Which is brilliant. It's not just one program, but a whole series of programs. They liked his pilot program and then have booked him for the rest. We have one of my most successful students is on network television, pretty much doing the same job, except better than I've been doing it. She's far better than me. So she's on network TV, and we've got people on commercials and so on, and lots of e-learning, lots of corporates. They're often the as I call it, the meat and potatoes of voiceovers, aren't they? They're not glamorous, but they can pay quite well, and they're a good source of work, really, good source of work and good source of your reading. And also audiobooks, and we've got lots of people doing audiobooks at the moment, working with ACX and working with another company called B Audio, two American companies. So there's lots of stuff out there, and I think that my successful students, I always say nothing to do with me; it's their success. Well, they're the ones that are successful.
Congratulations to them and also to you, because you had some role in their success. Of course, you just push them to do the right thing, because the voice and the potential of the voice is actually sometimes you are not aware of, and you need someone who actually encourages you and teaches you the right techniques. If you want to contact voice coach Gary, you have the site, the website and address on screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's all for this interview from VoiceOver Plaza, the podcast from DirectVoices.com, the VO marketplace, where voice talents meet voice seekers directly without middlemen. Check out our blog, VoiceOver Plaza, for more tips and tools to succeed in voice acting. So head on over to DirectVoices.com/Plaza. We are happy to read your comments there.